Yes. Thank you for the reminder. So welcome everyone that's here, audience, people that are online, and the candidates. Thank you for being here. Running is a really good experience. Win or lose, you meet a lot of people and you learn a lot. So I congratulate all of them for running. It's kind of a challenge to put your name out there. We will start tonight with an opening prayer by our Youth Council Mayor, Cougar Bartholomew, after which our Youth Council Government Chair, Camilla Bradshaw, will lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance.
Dear Heavenly Father, we thank you that we could gather here today as a city and be able to pick our leaders. And we thank you that we could live in a country where we are granted such rights and freedoms as being able to pick our national and local leaders. And we thank you that we are blessed with being able to have such qualified candidates to be running for the positions in our city, and we ask thee to help each of them in their candidacies. In the name of Jesus Christ, amen.
Please stand. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Our Youth Council does a great job. They helped organize this. They do a lot of things for us behind the scenes, and I give them a little applause for all they do. So tonight, we'll start, candidates will have a 1-minute intro, and then there'll be questions, and they'll each get a 2 minutes response to the questions. We have a timer here. We'll have cards out front. There'll be a timer here that everybody can see, that you'll be able to understand where you're at in your time slot. Tonight, I am really proud to announce that our moderator is Dr. The Honorable Mike Kennedy, who is also an attorney and is our state senator, and he's been our state representative before. And I don't think I know a better public servant than Mike. He listens, he's always kind. Whether or not you agree with him, he's going to treat you really well. And so I want to thank him for doing this. Very fair guy. Delighted to do that. I will be the clock guy sitting over here, so if there's a problem with the clock, it's the mayor's fault, and you'll just have to give me an indulgence, because you can't vote me out of office because I'm not running again. There's our new mayor, Kurt Ossler, who'll be an excellent mayor. So again, thank you to the candidates for being here, and I appreciate the fact that they're running, and I know how much work it is. So be kind tonight. I would save applauses till the end, and applause for everybody. No booing, no hissing. We'll let Mike do that, booing and hissing, so I don't expect that there'll be much. So with that, I'll turn it over to Mike and the candidates. Thank you again for being here.
Thank you, Mayor Mann, and to the participating audience in the room, as well as those that are participating virtually, thank you for being here. We're really grateful to have a chance to participate in this outstanding process, and thanks so much to the candidates. Mayor Mann and myself both understand what it's like to run campaigns, as do many of you from prior experiences, and bless you for your willingness to serve the community. And we're all friends here, and these questions that I have before me, some have been submitted by email prior to, and some are coming up to me in the version of cards with handwritten notes. Those that are writing questions, please make your legible handwriting legible so that I can read it. I'm a doctor, but I'm only so good at reading handwriting in spite of that fact. So So thanks for being here tonight, and thanks to Mayor Mann. He's been an outstanding public servant, and I definitely would not take the Best Public Servant Award. It's Mayor Mann that I would give that to. Thank you very much for all you've done, and grateful for your service, and frankly, sorry to see you leave, but I'm sure there's good people ready to take your place. So with that, we'll start off with the process. We have one candidate for mayor, Kurt Ossler. He's the corner candidate. Kurt in the corner is what he wants me to call him. So he will get time. Each candidate will have a minute to introduce themselves. And we'll start with the mayor pro tem is kind of what I think of calling you. We'll give you a minute. And then I have a list of candidates, and we'll kind of go through the candidates. Each will do a 1-minute intro, and then I will give a question, starting with the questions from the audience, and we'll go on from there. So, Kurt, let's give you some time, and actually just make sure you got to push the green button on your microphone. If you're not familiar with these, just make sure that the green light turns on when you turn on your microphone. Let us know if you have any problems with that. Go ahead, Kurt.
Okay. Well, as the only candidate, I didn't start out that way. I thought there'd be several others registering, but it's a humbling experience to be the only candidate. I actually, I'm like, well, hey, that's an easy road. To me, it kind of almost feels a little heavier. I feel like there's a little bit more responsibility put upon me. But I'd like to maybe introduce a little bit of myself. I am Kurt Ossler. I've lived here in Highland for 28 years. I've been married for 28 and a half years. So with a short time of being married, me and my wife moved here. We've had 5 children. I've served on the Planning Commission here in Highland, and I have served the last 3.5 years on the City Council. Actually, I appreciate Mayor Mann. I call him a mentor, trying to help teach me some of the ropes and some of the things. As we look at that, it's been an honor serving here in Highland and helping make those decisions. As your mayor, I promise to do my best to keep Highland safe and well-managed, keeping the community feeling in the values, making sure as a city we provide the needed services from roads, water, sewer, garbage, and public safety, including what we call values of life services such as trails, parks, library, and maintaining open space and large lot filling. And last but not least, keeping our taxes and our city expenses in check. I would be honored to be your mayor.
Thank you, Kurt. And Sarah Peterson will go next, followed by Jerry Abbott. So if you'd be prepared that way. Sarah, you have 1 minute to introduce yourself.
Hello, I'm Sarah Peterson. I am the mother of 7 kids, 5 girls and 2 boys. Also the grandmother of 7, which is 5 boys and 2 girls. So a little bit about myself, just so that we can get to know each other. I enjoy traveling and gardening and reading and the occasional Netflix binge. So I don't know if any of you can relate to that. I am a registered nurse by background. I have a master's degree in nursing administration, and I've worked in operations for a very long time away from the bedside. So that means I run everything from the financial to the people to the strategy in a large healthcare corporation, in previous life, and now for a tech company, of all things. So I think that the most important thing about this job moving forward is going to be my ability to listen and communicate with all of you. And so I'm committed to that and committed to balance. And, it's your vote and it's your voice, and I'm running to serve you. So thank you.
Thank you, Sarah. On to Jerry.
I'm Jerry Abbott. My wife Frankie and I have been married 27 years. We met at BYU, where I graduated in construction management, and we've lived here for 14 years in Bull River. I've served as HOA president for several communities as I work for development companies, and I currently own my own development company in Arizona. And I've been blessed to, Mayor Mann appointed me to be on the Planning Commission, where I'm currently the chair, to where I get to listen to a lot of the city's concerns and those things that are coming in. And I'm looking forward to hopefully serving on the city council as well. I enjoy solving problems. I like to listen to all sides of a situation because there's always a solution. When you look at that everybody's right in their perspectives, you can easily find solutions that make everybody happy, not completely happy, but happy. So I hope you vote for me.
Thank you, Jerry. And just to make sure that the candidates know, off to your right in the corner are outstanding Highland Youth Council who will hold up signs, rudely interrupting your thoughts to tell you that you need to take it, finish in 30 seconds or less, so they'll be doing that. And we appreciate their service that way. We're on to Scott Smith, followed by Kathy Harding. So Scott, if you go ahead.
First of all, I'd like to say, wow, that's the shortest speech Kurt has ever given. And we tease Kurt because sometimes when he makes motions, we say, is this a motion or an epistle to the Highlanders, chapter 4? So we just have to tease him. But I'm Scott Smith. I'm currently on the city council. I've lived in Highland 33 years, and I'm passionate about Highland. That's why I serve here. I'm a practicing physician. I'm a busy man, but I love serving the community. I've been serving on several boards. So my feeling is this: there are some distinct things about Highland, and it's our values. And the things that the public want is a neighborhood community. They want low density. They want the commercial in the town center. And I've been working hard over the years to help with some of the issues in the city, such as some of the open space neighborhood problems that we've been working on to resolve. I'm always worried about annexation by neighboring communities. Our community to the south is always kind of nibbling at us, and sometimes the one on the west takes big chunks. I'm opposed to annexation of Highland borders because we need to keep the density in the zoning Highland-oriented. I'm also an independent voice on the council. So I make the council basically look at different viewpoints, and sometimes I'm the minority vote. But if I feel strongly on an issue, I'm proud to do that.
Thank you very much, Scott, Kathy, and then Tina.
Hi, my name is Kathy Harding. A little bit about myself is that I grew up in a military family, so I moved around a lot as a child, and I lived in many cities throughout the United States and also lived overseas in the Philippines for 4 years. And so I have a deep love for my country and a deep love for peoples and culture. I moved to Utah when I was 17 and went to BYU, and I earned my bachelor's degree in international relations. I met my husband my senior year, and we lived here for 4 more years after that, and then we got a job in Southern California. We have been married for 38 years. We have 5 married sons and 10 grandchildren. Currently, I am a pianist, a piano teacher, and I am a pianist as well, but I'm a piano teacher, and I also play the flute, and I enjoy kickboxing. 2 years ago when we moved here, I started attending the city councils because I've always served in the community in which I've lived, and I wanted to find a way that I could serve here in Highland, and so I decided to come to city council, and I've learned a lot about the city, and have learned to love it, and I hope that I can serve you as well, and as your city councilman. And there we
Thank
go.
you, Kathy. Tina.
Hi, Tina Grunman. I've lived here for 33 years, just like Scott. Loved that Highland was old town-ish, a lower pace, slower pace, again, the low density, keeping commercial to a place. Those are a few things that I'm super passionate about. I have 6 siblings, and we have lived in Utah all our lives, love Utah, those mountains. I have 1 child, 30 years old. He serves at the Postal Service, so he works for the government. But I do have a really strong love of community and our beautiful country that we live in, and I want to do everything I can to represent the people that I live with and listen to them and do the best I can to keep Highland, Highland.
Thank you very much, Tina. And Colby, you're last on this first round.
Colby Gibson. I am going on 40 years. I moved here when I was 4. when there was real open space. In fact, my home is built in one of those where I got a four-wheeler stuck when I was a kid. I've lived in 4 neighborhoods in Highland. I promised my kids if they came, I would tell you I'm here because of a failed career as an underwear model. It's not totally true, but I'm still in underwear modeling. That's not true either. Anyway, guys, I love this. I'm a Highlander for life, and love this country, and the best way for us to make an impact is getting involved at the local level. I'm passionate about politics as much as it drives my poor family nuts. You sit there and just look, and oftentimes I sit where you guys are now. We have great staff and great city council, but there's so many times I've sat there and said, oh, ask this question, ask this question. And I want to ask those questions and really get to these answers and figure things out.
Thank you, Colby. So now we'll move to the open questions. Each of these you'll have a 2-minute time period to respond, and each one will go first. So we've already had Sarah go first this last time. So Jerry, you'll go first this time. And a question that is deeply embedded in all of our minds is, how would you improve Highland Glen Park? 2 minutes. And Jerry, you're first. Scott, you'll be second.
So our parks in general, as I look at parks, I love that the city uses those parks, Highland Glen Park, as well as other parks in our trails systems that we have. I was out yesterday looking at some of those trails and kind of how they've been maintained and what the future of those trail systems and what our parks are. I love our park that we're currently planning. I think that our parks need to be, I told my daughter that they're probably going to put a ninja park in there. And she asked what a ninja park was, and she got all excited, and I said, well, actually, I think we're putting in a standard park. But I think we should look deeper into what we use our last few areas for parks to improve them, to include all of our children. I mean, I was kind of surprised when Aubrey got pretty excited when I mentioned that. And I told her about some of the parks that were modeled after that in down south in St. George. And so I think parks can be a great amenity, but if we spend the money and the parks are all the same, I just think we lose some of that. A few years ago, my son was in the Frisbees on the Ultimate Frisbee team, and he and I went to there's a Frisbee golf course, which I didn't know kind of meanders through Highland. And I think some of those areas can also be improved to where we can have those types of amenities. In a community I lived in, the trail systems were connected to these parks so that you can walk and get to these parks without getting on the roads. And what I really loved about that community was it was a priority. And they plowed those parks in the wintertime, or those trails in the wintertime, so that we could still enjoy the trails during the winter. Joggers can still run there. My wife can go out back when we had kids and push the stroller. And it's safer. When our roads are being plowed, it's hard to, because a third of us probably plow our sidewalks, and so even though you're walking down the sidewalks, you have to get off the sidewalk and go back on. But I believe our parks are true amenities, but so are our trails. Our trails are just as important with those parks.
Thank you, Jerry. On to Scott, and then followed by Kathy. How would you improve Highland Glen Park?
So I'm going to talk specifically about Highland Glen Park. I live close by, and when I was first on the council, we made some improvements in Highland Glen Park that I just want to tell you about. We put a filtration system in the pond to try to keep the water cleaner. We still have to occasionally shut it down because of bacteria and things. But we also put a grassy beach on the north side, and through the Highland Foundation that I helped organize, we raised money and put in a professional beach volleyball court, which needs some maintenance at this time. In the last year, we put in 2 new restrooms in Highland Glen Park using the CARES Act money, which was kind of a real blessing for the city. This year, we're going to be repaving all the trails in the park, which is part of our trail repair process. So there is some money going in there. So Highland Glen Park is a highly used park, and it's used by a lot of different people throughout the county. It's a great fishing spot. And so we're trying to maintain that. I love going down Highland Glen Park because you're down there, you look up at the mountains and stuff, and part of you thinks you're in the canyon. And so I would like to, probably work with getting some more people on the park committee and making suggestions. We have done some fundraisers and different things. Right now, we're talking about gating the park so they can close it down at night, because one of the big problems we're having, and people in Highland need to realize this, is vandalism, okay? So we can spend tens of thousands of dollars to fix up the park, but if people come in and vandalize it, then we spend that money that we could be using to improve the park to repair the vandalism. So I'd encourage everyone to help us in that regard, but we've got great plans for the Highland Glen Park.
Thank you, Scott. And Kathy, you're next, followed by Tina.
Okay, so Scott covered a lot of it. He's very thorough. I have been down to Highland Glen Park with my grandchildren, and we enjoy the pond, and we do worry about the algae growth. We get signals for that all the time on our phones saying, oh, there's algae growth here, there's algae growth here in other ponds. But I have noticed that the maintenance needs to be done better at Highland Glen Park. It's also been very dry this year too, so we do have that issue, but the maintenance of the overgrowth and that kind of thing, I feel like it needs to be done a little bit better. The vandalism, which Scott talked about, we need to maybe, we were talked about closing the park a little bit early so that perhaps we could stave off some of that kind of mischievous activity. But it's a great park. It's in a great place, and I really enjoy taking my grandkids there, and we enjoy that park. So,
thank you, Kathy. Tina, and then Colby.
It's not as fun being further down the list because things have been kind of touched on, but the same sentiment with regard to the vandalism, gating or cameras, I don't know, something just to cut down on that so that people can actually enjoy what a beautiful place it is. And I like the filtration system that's in, maybe looking a little bit more at what we could do to try and keep the water a bit safer. If there's any possibilities for that, I think it would be worth looking into. And again, the overgrowth and some of the maintenance, maybe a little more time could be spent on that as well. But I do think it's a beautiful park, and I think overall Highland has done a good job with it to this point, but we just need to keep that ball rolling in that direction and keep it a beautiful place for everybody to enjoy.
Thank you, Tina. We'll go to Colby next, followed by Sarah.
So one of those hidden gems we have here in Highland is that park. In fact, we've done family pictures there many times, and it's gorgeous. You don't realize there's a high school right behind you. It's totally hidden. The houses are hidden, and you can get some beautiful shots. I would say the same thing. Trails are always an issue, and we struggle with them, and we struggle with them not because staff doesn't want to do it, but because there's just not enough money and time and resources to make it happen. As far as what I would change, I'm a water guy, and I know some people who are really, really good at providing treatments for some of these things, and I think there are some options there that we can do that we've never tried before that could make that water better than what it is. We've done it in some other places, a lot of golf ponds and other things as part of one of the businesses I'm involved with, and they're very functional and very helpful, and that's probably the biggest issue, is it makes it difficult for people to enjoy. If you're not allowed to get into it, or you get swimmer's itch or something else when you come out of it, that's just an unpleasant thing. It's one of our special things, and I want to keep it beautiful and make sure that people can really enjoy it and enjoy all aspects of it.
Thank you, Colby. Finally, Sarah.
So that really is a wonderful park. So first of all, the water is amazing, and we need to make sure that we can continue to use that water. It's really great when our youth can go and have a place to fish or play in the water. And the maintenance is a little bit, it's just a symptom of a larger issue with a lot of our trails and more of our parks. And so how do we address that? And also being thoughtful into the long-term plan. So what's good this year we have to make sure is good for 5 years down the road or 10 years. And what is the plan for that? For both the upkeep, the development, the use of, the maintenance of. And so I would just, along with some of the other great thoughts that have been put in, to make sure that we're thoughtful about that long-term along with the short-term plan, so that we don't become short-sighted about our options now or in the future.
Thank you, Sarah. We'll do another round of questions with 2 minutes for response. This is a question submitted virtually, and the question is, based on your knowledge of the city's budget, what are your plans to ensure the long-term fiscal health of Highland? So Scott, you'll be up first, followed by Kathy. I'll read that one more time. Based on your knowledge of the city's budget, what are your plans to ensure the long-term fiscal health of the city of Highland? Scott.
I want to state right off, I'm a fiscal conservative. Highland runs on a tight budget because we're very efficiently run. We're probably one of the most efficient ones in the state. So if you compare the city west of us, which is about 4 times the size of Highland, their budget's around $200 million. Our city of 20,000, with you put the general fund and the enterprise funds, which are the utility funds that you all pay for every month, runs at about $16 to $17 million a year. So you can see that we're really running the city very efficiently. So the question always becomes, how do you finance a city? We have a lot of demands and different things. What most people in this room don't realize is about 2/3 of the tax money that we use to fund the city is sales tax. And you say, how can that be? Because we have a small commercial district. But the way it's set up on the state is we share or get some shared tax from all the other cities. So that's important. We have not raised property tax or changed property tax in the city for 11 years. In fact, we lowered the property tax in 2010, and I voted for that. So how else do we raise money in the city? We have a lot of other fees and things, the road fee and open space fee and those things. The problem is we may lose some of those fees. Now we're being kind of blessed with the money that's rained down from the federal government. We're going to have some money come from these new acts, like $1 million this fall and probably $1 million next year, that we're going to use, and it'll keep us from having to raise any taxes otherwise. But long term, this is always a constant discussion. We have a lot of studies done, and we're trying to make plans down the future. But right now, the city's funded a lot from growth.
Thank you, Scott. Kathy, you're next, and then Tina after.
Thank you. So my slogan is planning our future together. And the big part that I wanted to emphasize is the planning part. So Highland, like as Scott was saying, we run on a tight budget. And I've met with the financial officers, and I've met with the city administrators, and we've, discussed the different financial situations that we are in. But the basic financial, things that we have to do is like how we run our homes. You have a budget, and if you are exceeding your budget, then you have to cut back. If you are, I've lost my train of thought. Anyway, you either have to, increase your money that you have, or you have to decrease what, reduce your spending. And so when we're looking at our budget here, we need to do that as well. But the fact of the matter is we don't have a great revenue stream, and so we are either going to have to, in the future, and this is what I'm worried about, is 5 years down the line, because like he said, right now we're doing okay, because we got some money from the government, and we're getting some more money in September. But, we either have to increase our revenue, or we have to cut costs, or we have to raise taxes. And I do not want to raise taxes. That is not what I'm about. I want to keep taxes as low as possible, and I want to use the money that you give to the city as carefully and as prudently as I can. And so that is how I would try to keep our city fiscally healthy.
Thank you, Kathy. Tina is next, and then Colby, and I'll read the question one more time. Based on your knowledge of the city's budget, what are your plans to ensure the long-term fiscal health of Highland? Go ahead, Tina.
So, first of all, I have to say right out the gate, I'm not a politician, but I am just a regular person who wants to keep Highland as close to its roots as I can. I do know that we run on a very tight budget, like others have said, compared to some of our neighbors who have substantially more revenue. But I have always been of the school of thought that if you don't have the money for it, then you don't get it. So never to spend frivolously on things, and to really keep a super close eye on the very most important things, which I think are safety, and roads are involved in safety and whatnot. But to be very, very particular about where you're putting the monies. I'm not a fan of raising taxes, and I think it's wonderful that for 11 years we haven't had to. But we do just have to keep in mind that if we're wanting more, then we're going to have to come up with more money somewhere. So just to do the very best that we can to live within our means, and try to keep the values of Highland, and stay within the monies that we have.
Thank you, Tina. Colby is next, followed by Sarah.
So my Facebook political affiliation for the longest time, since I first opened it, was whichever party doesn't think they can spend my money better than I can. I don't know which party that is, but that's where we belong. It's a very simple thing. We need to recognize proper role. Where are we going to spend it? What are the most important things? And sometimes things are really, really good, but that's not where money should be spent by even a muni government. It's not where it belongs. We seem to be, as far as I can tell, very fiscally responsible, and we're trying, and we're doing a good job. And I'm a protection person by trade. I teach people how to survive under the water. I teach people how to survive in their business. I teach them how to be successful in the long term. And we have some issues creeping up on us. Building permits are not going to be around much longer. We're last I heard, we're about 90% built out once we finish the projects that are in place. That is a revenue stream for us. The other thing that is very much at risk is all of these fees that we've done. I mean, there's arguments on both sides, but we have a lot of fees that are being charged, and PG's in appeals court right now and is very likely going to lose that, according to a number of attorneys I've spoken with. So if we lose that, all of a sudden we are really hurting fiscally, and we have all of these revenue streams that are gone. And we've got to, if we're going to go from a protection standpoint, we've got to look at it first and look at it before it happens. I'm not a believer in waiting and reacting when it happens. I'm a believer in saying, hey, it's very likely this is going to happen, let's go fix it. You eliminate fees and taxes go up a little bit. I would hope it's net neutral for a lot of people. That I think is something that's going to have to happen. There's, especially if we're going to lose those fees. I do not believe you do both, and raise taxes and raise fees, which makes me not a good politician. But again, let's really work on looking out into the future and building this out and making sure that we're prepared, so that if we lose this stuff, we're not in trouble.
Thank you, Colby. We're on to Sarah, followed by Jerry.
Yeah, luckily we have a legacy that it has been well managed, and so it has a foundation of good management. As I met with the city finance manager, it was very enlightening to see and hopeful to see that that had been well managed to date. For example, we keep some for a rainy day set aside. As you know, economies can go up and down, and that can cause problems for our residents if we don't keep an eye on that. So it's nice to have a little fun for a rainy day. And Highland chooses to put enough aside, whatever the state maximum is for that. To be fiscally responsible, though, moving forward, we have to do a couple of things. One, we have to anticipate what's going to come down the pike the best we can. Two, as it's been suggested about that federal money coming in, you know, from my experience, federal dollars are usually not free. There's stipulations that come with that. And so rather than just accepting all of that money, we need to look at the stipulations and say, is that what we agree with for our community? Do we want to follow those? And if not, have the courage to say we're going to reject that money, and because we're fiscally responsible, that we have the ability to do so. And then when it makes sense, accept it and use it for our residents and for our city, and make sure that we also anticipate whatever we do with it, what costs are that going to incur later? Because they're not always going to be giving us that money. And yet a lot of times there's upkeep for things that we do, and there'll be incremental costs throughout the years if we don't watch that. And so certainly, I'm a fan of keeping taxes and fees low. We have increased our fees. Certainly for me, that feels like a tax. But it's true, we like the services and we don't like the taxes. So how do we balance that out so that we don't ding our residents where we don't have to, and we can really help them, and yet allow for also the services that we all need and expect?
Thank you, Sarah. On to Jerry. Finish this question out. Thank you.
So I'm grateful that the past councils and mayors have balanced the budget, that we don't go into debt. I've been here 14 years, and I know that we passed a road bill, a 7-year plan, which we're 4 years into it, and you know, things are progressing. And the roads that are left are roads that have failed, and I think it's a good strategy to try to protect what we have and then replace the roads that have totally failed. Except we shouldn't have gotten into that kind of position to begin with. In a lot of communities where we've developed, there's studies that are done, reserve studies, so that as you're planning and doing all this maintenance, you're also looking ahead and putting in reserves so that you don't have to come down the road and do a 7-year road plan. Those are things that were looked at ahead of time. On the Planning Commission, as people come in and they want certain things, because we all, want to keep the commercial down, we want our parks to look great, our trails to look, well, that comes with a fee. If you go to a private community HOA, it's a high HOA fee. If you want gated communities, high HOA fee. But I'm very fiscal. I don't want to just spend money to spend money. If the community wants something, we should plan for it. Is it going to happen that year? No, but if it happens in 5 years, we set these reserves so that we're not having to come every once in a while and do a 7-year this or a 5-year this, or, we had another fee that just expired, but we kept it because now we want to use it to something else. Well, it should expire and we should have another discussion before it just keeps going. I understand why we want to keep certain things in place, because people get used to them. Well, we should have another discussion and plan the city. And I have the experience. I think there are a lot of road methods, road techniques to protect our roads, but they shouldn't get all the way to failure and put prioritized at the end. There should have been a plan that these roads get replaced when they're supposed to be replaced and maintained when they're supposed to be maintained.
Thank you, Jerry. We'll move on to another question. Kathy, you'll go first, followed by Tina. How would you respond differently to the water shortage than is happening now?
Okay, so as we all know, there's a drought right now. We have the population of Utah is going to be growing, doubling by the year 2065. We have the Utah County should be experiencing a growth of about 1 million people by 2065. At the same time, we have the same water resources. So we did have, some of you may have remembered getting a little card in the mail asking us to conserve by 30%. We need to be doing more of that kind of thing. The education is, I think, very important. When residents don't know that they have used too much water, because Highland uses more water for their pressurized irrigation than any other city in Utah. But I don't think that they know exactly how much they are using, because we don't have meters. Meters are going to be coming, and that I think will be a really great educational source for us, because if you know how much you're using, then you're going to be able to cut back. If you don't know how much you're using, it's difficult to know what you're doing. There are also many other conservation things that we can be doing. I know the state has rebates for things such as your smart controllers for your yards and low-flow toilets and those kinds of things, low-flow shower heads, that kind of stuff. And so those are things that we can be looking forward to, but we do need to curb our behavior. We have been spoiled a little bit, I think, by the amount of water we have, but now we have population coming in and droughts, and so we need to be able to curb our behavior, and that might be turning off your water when you're brushing your teeth, that kind of thing, taking shorter showers. So those are the things that we can do, I think, to help conserve water in this drought situation and in the future, because there are going to be more people living here, and so we are going to have to conserve. And those people are not just people moving in from out of state, but they are our children that are going to be staying here and our grandchildren, and I would like for them to stay. So we need to conserve that water.
Thank you, Kathy. Tina, followed by Colby.
So I think a lot of the water issues I've noticed, I see a lot of maybe it's not my problem mentality. I see a ton of watering going on at really poor times of the day. Folks who water every single day, there's too much of a let somebody else take the brunt of that mentality, and I think we might really need to get a little bit stricter about that. I know we don't have meters, but you can see what your neighbors are doing, and maybe we need to be better about turning in our neighbors. Nobody wants to do that. But if people don't step up and take a stand, everybody will just continue to abuse it. I know a good friend of mine way up north, they are cited. They're given I think she said a $250 ticket the first time they're caught deviating from the plan that's in place, and they're only 2 days a week. That's all they get is 2 days a week. The second time they're caught doing it, their water's shut off. And I think that as severe as things are right now, it might be worth considering some of those really big steps. Nobody wants it to be them that has to cut back, but if we don't really force it, I think it'll continue to just be abused. And I think it is kind of being abused a little bit.
Thank you, Tina. Now on to Colby, followed by Sarah.
I don't think we're going to change anybody. You could use a carrot method, you can use a stick method, right? You can try and create things, but people who are going to water every day are going to water every day. And if you want to fix it, the only way you're going to fix it is using one of those two methodologies. You can punish them, which I'm not a fan of, but I'm a huge fan of getting these meters in and saying, hey, if you want to water every single day and you want to water 3 acres all the time, you can do that. But it should cost them a lot. And there's a lot of people who don't care, and they'll do that. They have no problem paying those extra fees, and they're willing, and they're going to keep that 3-acre beautiful green lawn in 110-degree weather all the time, and that's okay. I personally think that's a great way to do it. We make more money, we end up paying for it. There's a lot of people who will go the other way. Everyone gets the same amount based on lot size, and you adjust and tweak it that way. I remember I used to travel a lot, and when a lot of these places were trying to get you to save money, these hotels, they'd say, hey, if you will use your towel, and it helps us save money, it helps us save money. And then once I went to one and they said, hey, if you'll use the same towel for your stay, we will take 5% off your bill. And all of a sudden I was motivated to use the same towel. Before I didn't care because it didn't matter to me. That's the carrot method. Give them a reward. Give them something that actually is a benefit to them. And that's, I think, the way that you can actually change people. Again, I think meters are critical. I know we're trying to get them. All the new builds have them, but we're not really doing much with them. And I don't think now's the time to start. You don't ding the new homes. You ding the people once we can get everybody measured and create a fair community. And let those who want more pay for it.
Thank you, Colby. On to Sarah, followed by Jerry.
Now, I'm not a water expert. but I think it's important to understand some basic things about where our water is coming from. The water that comes to irrigate our lawns come from the reservoirs, which are very low this year because of the drought. The water that comes for us to drink comes from wells dug down into the aquifers. And so those are two very different issues and two very different sources of water. So this year we're really struggling with the drought and the level of water in the reservoirs. As I've talked to some of those who deal with this every day, there's not as much concern about the wells that are down into the aquifers. So we're not at risk yet of our drinking water and our household water, but it's that irrigation water. So depending on how bad it gets, well, let me back up, because for those of us who have lived in Utah long enough, you know, some years we're dealing with drought, and other years we're dealing with floods, and then other years we hit the mark. And so we have to be just as thoughtful about, again, planning and anticipating both of those conditions and making sure that we're prepared and have a plan in place so that we're not scrambling on those years. This will not be our last year of a drought, and I guarantee we'll see other years of floods. So what are we going to do with the extra water when we get way too much? I don't know if some of you remember mudslides years ago, where we were all sandbagging to help out our neighbors. But certainly, I love the volunteer method, because I have a lot of faith in the citizens. And I think when we explain the problem in the right way, that most people will jump in. I don't think it will be all, but I think it will be enough to help us get through the problems that we need to get through. And if we have to, we can do a hierarchy of needs. Certainly farmers and those that produce our food should come first. Our beautiful lawns should not come first, even though I really like my lawn. So that's how I think we should approach that.
Thank you, Sarah. Jerry, followed by Scott.
So I live in Bull River, where we have, 2-acre lots, big lawns, all that kind of stuff. And, I went out and met with Mark Thompson and looked at our water situation, and there are two issues here. There's our drinking water and then our irrigation water. And I do know that our irrigation water will be subsidized sometime with groundwater. But our wells right now, we have a well that's, 600 feet. The cities around us are going 1,000, 2,000 feet. And as wells around you get deeper, they can starve the wells that are shallow. And I was happy to find out that the city and the water department is planning ahead to drill another well, which is, close to $1 million to drill wells. As I look at the irrigation, and you hear people say, well, just water twice a week. Well, then they just flood their lawns twice a week. You actually use more water when you water twice a week. I like, if you get a controller and you can reduce it 30% or whatever, and I even asked Mark, I said, what do you really feel is going to happen? He goes, people are going to have to choose between their lawns and their trees. And so, like, for me personally, all my lawn is electronic. I tore out my back lawn and put an artificial lawn in. It's a lot nicer for a dog, by the way. You're not killing it all the time. But also, this year is a year that you just have your lawn survive. And it's real easy to meter people, because you can see the really lush green lawns. It's obvious they're growing. And you can see the ones that are, 50-50 or even less. Those lawns will survive to the next. This isn't a year to have a beautiful yard. This is a year to not have to replace your lawn the following year. And so I do believe that metering is the best method, because when people are charged, just like we've heard here, they get way more conservative. When your power bill goes up, guess what? You get a lot more conservative. And so I'm glad to hear that the city is definitely going down. We got denied for the funding, but we're putting in place, other methods that should be discussed to pay for those meters.
Thank you, Jerry. Go ahead, Scott.
Okay, since this is a debate, I just want to go back and mention a couple things in the previous question. I tried to set some of the background for the city finances, and it's kind of hypocritical to say I'm a fiscal conservative and I love federal money coming in. It's not what I was saying. I think it's a travesty that on the federal government they're printing money as fast as they can and showering trillions of dollars, because somebody's going to have to pay for that in the future, and it's going to be our kids and grandkids. So, but as a city, what do? We have a tight budget. It's $10.6 million for general fund. Do you turn away $1 million from the federal government and say, out of principle, we're going to turn it away, and I would like to do that, but then do you raise property taxes to make up the difference? It's a dilemma that you face on the city council, and it's hard to find a balance. So what do we do about water? Well, first of all, we've been working on this. Up in the northwest part of the city, there's a reservoir that started dropping really fast, and the pressurized irrigation was going to be out. So first of all, we did education. And you know what? The people up in the northwest area, where some of these candidates are from, decreased their water usage by 30%. So educate, educate, educate. We're all good people. We don't want to run out of water. Two, the next thing we do is meters. We've talked about meters. They're putting meters on the new houses. We're not using them yet. We're trying to get grants to get everybody metered. If you have to pay more for it, chances are you'll use less of it. We use too much water in Highland. It's a beautiful city. What's the third thing we can do? We can do more aeroscaping, especially in public areas and different things. So culinary water, we've actually got 5 wells. 3 of them really aren't being used. We're going to drill them deeper in that. The 2 main wells almost failed last year. We had to use all the reserves to repair those 2 wells. So we've increased water fees to help build up the reserve again. We are planning for the future. There's been long-range plans. We're planning for the rest of the build-out in the city, and I think the staff has done a good job that way.
Thank you, Scott. We'll move on to another question that is city council specific. And Tina will go first, Colby is second. The city council recently created a new disposal process for orphaned open space properties. What are your thoughts on the process, and do you have any recommendations for improvement? Go ahead, Tina.
I'm sorry, read the question one more time.
Happy to do it. The city council recently created a new disposal process for orphaned open space properties. What are your thoughts on the process, and do you have any recommendations for improvement?
So actually, I don't know about that process, what was put into place or not, so I really can't speak at all intelligently on that whatsoever. I'm willing to learn anything. Like I said, I'm not a politician, but I'm willing to learn, and I'm a pretty bright person, so I can pick up on things real quick, but I can't speak on that with any intelligence whatsoever.
Thank you. We'll go to Colby next, and then that'll be followed by Sarah.
Of the 4 neighborhoods I've lived in Highland, 2 of them have been in these open space neighborhoods. One of them was probably the most contentious open space debate in the history of Highland. And I know the whole history because I lived there. We dealt with people saying, hey, take care of it, take care of it, take care of it. And then finally, out of desperation, people came saying, we need to take this. Highland is not a good neighbor. That's actually going to be on the referendum this month, or in November, because a referendum was done, and so that one, I'm no longer in that neighborhood, but I know why it happened. The whole special service district open space thing was an amazing sales job done by some builders. A great idea, but it's not working in most cases. There are some cases that it does, but very few. There's 18 open space or special service districts across the Highland, 26% of the residents, and they're all paying these fees and feeling like, what am I getting for this? There are a few that are backed right up to parks, and they were doing a decent job in those parks. We're getting those lawns mowed, and they're a little brown too, but they should be right now, that's okay. But a lot of the other ones are not looking good, and I know, because I can tell you, I sold my home out there, and I had to go spend hundreds of hours cleaning it up so that it didn't detract from my property value so that I could sell my home, and that was from 3 realtors who came and said, if you fix this, it will sell for this price. If you don't, it'll sell for this price. We did a great job. City Council actually found some wonderful ways, and they found some that they just, I mean, it was amazing. They rocked through and just said, this one makes sense, this one makes sense, this one makes sense. There's probably a whole ton more that can be done like that, and we need to. But man, we've got to address the other ones, because we have some people that are getting, in my opinion, stolen from every single month, where fees are being taken and put into a collective group and used wherever it feels like, and that's not okay.
Thank you, Colby. Now to Sarah, then Jerry, the orphan-spaced properties disposal process from the City Council. Go ahead.
Yeah. The open space certainly has been a hot topic for many, many years. There's some things that the City Council have done that I completely agree with. There's some that I have not agreed with. So the sale that's coming on the referendum, I'm happy it's coming on a referendum. I didn't agree with the way that was handled. With that being said, I do think that there's good intent and that it needs to be addressed. I'm looking forward to having the dust settle a little bit after the referendum, and then going back to the drawing board. I agree that some people are paying fees and they're not getting any services, but they're covering for a lot of other services that other residents of Highland are getting. But how do we solve this problem that we've all inherited, and yet keep that open space and make sure it's maintained and beautiful for all of the residents of Highland and for those neighbors that live right next to it? So I don't have all of the answers to the open space, but I'm excited to see what the referendum brings, to talk to additional residents that live there and that don't live there, so that then we can come together as a group and let's bring some new ideas to the table. Because I think some of the other ideas have been hashed over, so maybe we need to step away just for a second and take another look at it. And I wouldn't be surprised if some of the good residents of Highland have some pretty good ideas of how to solve the problem. So, but certainly a hot topic, and happy to see that referendum coming.
Thank you, Sarah. On to Jerry, then Scott.
I spent a lot of time with different people, out of Canterbury and looking at the different scenarios. You have 18 communities. The first view was a learning experience where they put a bunch of these little tiny open spaces to meet a requirement. And then there's the open space view, which I think is a separate issue, where there's general parks and trails, which is more of the Wimbledon issue, which I totally believe we should not be selling those things. But in specifically to the orphan properties, these are little properties. They're kind of cut off from the rest of the community. And I agree with some of what the city is doing in selling those pieces off where it doesn't affect the openness of what was agreed to at the time of the development to get the higher density instead of going with the R140 larger lots. The only thing that I would tweak, and there's always something to tweak, is when we sell those properties, they're valuing those at such a low price. And somebody said, well, that's really low. Look at market values are today. And I said, look, if there's a restriction on the property when they sell it to that person that they cannot build on it, that it still stays open space, but it becomes their property, that's a fair value. But if you sell him that property and he can then go back and build a shed or a workshop or something in the back, that's buildable real estate, which is like 4 or 5 times more valuable. And I think it goes against what the initial intent of that space was, is to feel more open. So I'm in support of selling the orphan pieces, not anything that's connected to a trail or park or any of those things, but where they're literally orphan. They're off by themselves, that one person's basically the only one that sees it. But there should be a restriction in the sale that limits their ability to build on it. They can hardscape it, hopefully, because we don't want them putting grass on it, but they could hardscape it, include it in their envelope, make their lot bigger, but they shouldn't be allowed to go right back there and build a big, I just built a big shop that's 5 feet off the back or 10 feet off the back property line. We want to keep the intent of what that property was done, and we can deed restrict it when we sell it. And I think that's the one thing that we're missing when we're doing this.
Thank you, Jerry. Scott, and then Kathy.
First of all, I'd like to say I don't live in an open space neighborhood, but one of the advantages for re-electing me is I've been working on these open space neighborhood issues for 12 years, and we've looked at a lot of different solutions. Some have worked, some haven't. But the problem with the open space neighborhoods wasn't the concept of open space. We love open space. We love parks. We love trails. It was how they were designed. And so when they were designed, they created a lot of little orphan properties that Jerry's talked about and Colby. And basically, the city has no public use for them. And they're just an eyesore because they used, quote, native vegetation, which is code word for weeds. And the problem is a lot of them are fire hazards and things. So the people that live there have been really frustrated because, yes, they all pay $240 more a year to maintain those, and we just don't have the staff and the funds and the things we should do. And I'll tell you what people really hate. People don't like trails behind their homes. And when they design some of these neighborhoods, they put the trail behind the home. And the big controversial one that's on the referendum is Wimbledon. So we had a solution, and we said, well, we have more trails in Highland than St. George. We don't have the money to maintain them. Is this one solution? Saying some of these are neighborhood option trails, and if the neighborhood gets together, does the majority with a petition, will consider it. That neighborhood did it 3 times. So I supported them because they had the majority of the people. Well, it became real controversial. So we changed things. We have a new process now, and last month we surplused a bunch of these orphan properties and resolved some of the conditions in some of these neighborhoods like Windsor Park, Viewpoint, Highland Hills that had been percolating and giving us trouble for 15 years. So the new way we're doing it is really, I think, probably the best way. So you need somebody that's gone through this whole process. I think that's one reason, so we don't have to reinvent the wheel all the time.
Thank you, Scott. Kathy, if you'd go ahead.
So the orphan properties, I am so excited about the work that the City Council has been doing in trying to rectify all of those little properties and sell them to the owners of the homes that live next to them. Because that has caused a lot of conflict in our city, and when it is appropriate, then it's a good idea. When it's not, then of course, if the city needs it for some drainage or has a pipe under it or whatever, of course that shouldn't be so. But they've been I think they've been very thoughtful and very thorough in their decision making about those orphan properties. So I'm really proud, and I commend our City Council for trying to address that difficult issue. Open space has also been, besides orphan properties, the open space has also been a very sensitive subject. I have gone over to the Wimbledon property and talked to many of the residents over there about the situation, and they have very strong feelings about the trail behind their homes. I have studied the master plan, the general plan for Highland, and the trails and the open space was a really big part of that general plan, and to sell off the trails to me would be very against the general plan. However, I do know that there's so much, what do I want to say? The property owners there in the Wimbledon area, do want to buy that property because they're tired of the weeds, they're tired of the native plants, and so I see and I feel their pain and suffering from that, I guess, is what I want to say, and I can understand their frustration, but at the same time, I would hate to start selling off trails and open space to accommodate those kinds of things. So I think we need to find an answer to the problems. The problem may not be that there's a trail, the problem is that there's weeds. And so if we can address that, then maybe we could come to some kind of a compromise.
Thank you, Kathy, and thank you for answering those questions. A few points for the election is that these are 2 city council seats that will be 4-year terms from January of 2022 until December of 2025. And the mayoral seat is also a 4-year term. The primary election is to winnow down 6 candidates down to 4, and then in the general election in November, the 2 city council seats will be filled. I'm told that the ballots will come by mail and they're due by August 10th, so I just wanted to give you that information, which was passed on to me. We're going to finish up with actually closing statements. We'll start with our Mayor Pro Tem, and then 1 minute to each of you to wrap up, and then we'll vacate this room, go back out to the lobby where people can ask their more detailed questions and get more detailed answers from the candidates of their choice. But let's go ahead and do closing statements, and Kurt, we'll start with you.
Can I have a little bit longer than 1 minute since I didn't have a...
We would, you deserve that since you didn't even get to participate in the debate, so.
But I see 12 minutes up there.
You know, I really appreciate these
We'll
six
give you 40
candidates.
minutes, yeah.
I won't take...
Just kidding.
I won't do an epistle, okay? But no, I appreciate having 6 candidates. You know, as running, it was really hard. I'm currently on the city council. It was a hard decision to make. Do you stay on the city council to be a mayor or run for mayor? City council is really where the vote happens. The mayor is a figurehead in Highland. I mean, he doesn't have a vote. He gets to do the meeting, but the city council does a lot of the direction. It's really important that we get some really good city council members to come and help us in the city. And so I think we have some great candidates here, and I look forward to see the 4 that go through. We'll have some more debates after that, and then as we go on. But I thought I'd spend time about what I've done in the last 3.5 years as a city council person. We hear a lot of the candidates. One of my favorite things is knocking doors, is going and visiting neighborhoods and talking about residents. And talk with them. I know several of the candidates up here. It actually energized me. You'll still see that even though I might be the only candidate for mayor, I think it's really important for me still to go out and knock doors, to find out what the people are saying. And so I will still, during this campaign, be knocking doors. The other thing, we had a lot of questions that brought up about the trails, and I appreciate that. As a city council, when the vote came for Wimbledon, I defended to keep the trails and the open space. The city council also put just recently in a 6-year plan for our trails, which means we have now a plan how to go preserve the trails. We also have put funding in as a source, so there's funding now to be able to support that. None of the funding is coming out of the open space $20 fee for the trails that's out there. That was one thing that when we got onto the city council, the fees were coming out of some of it from the open space special service district. We have found different source of funding to be able to fund that part of the general fund. It's actually coming out of a special tax that you pay when you go and buy gas. We get a 1/4 cent tax back here in Highland. We're using that money to go towards trails. We're also improving some of the sidewalks. We're doing some of the other things with that. I've went out and looked at every one of the open space neighborhoods, all 18. It is an issue. It is a concern. We hear from those residents that we maybe need to do a little bit more maintenance. So what have we been doing? Now, when I say we, I want you to understand, I have some really good city council members that I'm working with. I have a good mayor I've been working with. So this isn't just me doing it. This is what we have been doing as a city council. But we've looked at those parks. We've hired an arborist. We recognize the sticker weeds that are out there go on our bike tires. So we're addressing that. This year, we have a new arborist that's going out and starting to spray the weeds. Last year, we actually had an outside service that went along and tried to spray those weeds. We actually usually would mow what we call the native area, which is non-growing grass, or it's not supposed to be growing, depending on what happens. We usually only mowed it once a year. Last year, we were able to do it 3 times. We have been listening. We are trying to do our best. We recognize there's maintenance concerns. It's hard. Some really like the native, some don't. There's a balancing act there. So as we look at the open space, that is still something that's going to be ongoing that needs to be addressed with the current and the new city council. As I mentioned, I think one of my strong characters that I brought and I've tried to do is listen. It's really important to me to go out, and when I say knock neighborhoods, I remember Jerry, you brought up Canterbury. There was a time where a trail there was coming up for a vote to remove the trail going down to the park. I remember it being called out, and I thought, I need to know what those residents say. We heard Kathy go there to Wimbledon and knock those doors. We've been there, and it divides neighborhoods. When we talk about trails or open space, we are dividing neighborhoods. So as we talk about how did the city council and the mayor, we try to remove the process where it wasn't so much neighbor against neighbor, but bring it to the city council. We've taken the burden. If you want to do something with the orphan open space or sell it and buy it, it used to be you had to go get 70% of everyone in your subdivision plat to approve it. We removed that out of the subdivision. You don't have to go knock doors of every one of your neighbors to say, hey, well, am I okay to buy? It's the city council's decision, and we will work through that and take those repercussions, and so it's not with the neighbors. That was one of the things we were noticing. We were dividing neighborhoods. As we've talked about with, I've went and anytime there was a new subdivision being planned or new plans, I went and visited to understand what was going to happen in that neighborhood. Now, I'm not the only one. I know a lot of the city council go out and we try to be good stewards, and I'll keep doing that as your mayor. Scott brought up about the city budget. Currently, right now, as he brought up, about 10.6 million in the general fund. Now, some of that, a lot of that goes to your public safety, by the way, to your police and fire. But we have to try to be fiscally responsible. We are put in reserve 27%. Now, a lot of people go, hold it, you're going to be saving and putting in a savings account $2.7 or $3 million. You need to understand, we don't get paid like a normal business. We have cash flow issues. We get property tax maybe in November, December. So we need to have reserves when we're spending during the year to be able to pull on until we get that cash. And also we need to be careful. Scott brought up, we were losing a well this last year. That was one of my biggest fears. If you ask what one of my fears are to keep me up as a mayor, I am worried about our water. I'm worried about our public safety. I'm worried about some of these things and going, what are we going to do next year if we don't have these reserves to be able to pull down from Dry Creek or from Deer Creek? Right now, this year, our water, I talked to the water master last night, we're at 25% water coming out of AF Canyon. We now are starting to pull all of our water, which comes down the Burdock Canal, for our irrigation. I am nervous next year if we have it. I don't know what we're going to have to do. We're going to be trying to save trees and not lawns next year. And so it is a nervous. I don't know, we almost did lose some wells, and I apologize, I'm taking probably a little too much time here, but.
Chapter 5.
Yes. Okay, here we go. Scott, well said. I've worked with the legislators. I've also made sure that the city budget, that the internet tax, I said I'd focus on the internet tax. I went and did that. I've tried to see if we could get a zip code for Highland. I went with the mayor and with the city council. We tried to work to get a zip code. I've worked on the economic committee to try to help with our businesses here. I've served on the public safety board. And I do want to address something there with the public safety. Our police took a little bit of a beating last year. And I appreciate our residents that stood up and tried to support them, took them goodies. But our fire department this last couple of weeks have had some really bad accidents. And when I looked at our fire chief, I says, how are our EMTs doing? They've been on several that people have passed away, young individuals with different accidents. I worry about them emotionally. I mean, when you talk about what keeps you up, that's where I worry. The other thing I worry about, are we going to have sewer backups? I remember one time we had a sewer backup. I ran down there, 7 homes had sewer coming in their basement. That's not fun. Well, this is a city issue. And so as a city, we got to be able to take care of that. So as your mayor, I promise to communicate and listen, study out the topics and be prepared, and I'll serve with integrity and respect. I ask for your vote. If you'd like some more information, please go to kurtossler.com.
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem. And let's go, Colby, you'll be able to go first with closing statements, followed by Sarah.
Mike, how long do we have? 1 minute?
Just 1 minute each, yes.
Okay.
You hear me get passionate about orphan properties. That was a good one, and that was a great last one. I'm not saying get rid of the trails. I think the trails are gorgeous. I think the trails can be beautiful. But I'm saying get rid of the current status quo. We can't keep doing what we're doing. That is not working. I love this city. I mean, like I said, I'm going on 40 years. There's something unique. My wife and I have always wanted to bring our family back. I've lived in 4 different neighborhoods here. I know what it's like to live on a street and have the street get busier and busier. I know what it's like to live in front of a stop sign and have people running through it and see it through your bay window every single day. I know what it's like to see those frustrating things as you grow, and I can feel for the residents that are dealing with that every single day, and we need to do better. And that's what our job is in these seats, is to make sure that we're protecting those people and really helping them live in this city that they think they're living in, and make sure we keep it beautiful.
Thank you, Colby. Sarah, and then followed by Jerry.
We've talked about a lot of issues today, and you've been able to hear a little bit and learn a little bit about the candidates. And I enjoyed what Kurt's remarks were. I support him, and I agree with his views on almost everything. But I want all of you to know how committed I am to all of you. As I've listened to the people of this city, sometimes they don't hear heard. And so that's where I want to make a difference. I want to make a quick story. As I was overseeing a large care management program for a large healthcare system. We had a woman that was visiting the emergency department a lot, and she was labeled high utilizer and not very respected. So I decided we needed to go and visit her in her home. And what we found out there was that there was no food in the fridge, and she didn't have shoes for her children. And so we immediately knew, all of a sudden, we understood the problem, and we knew how to help her. So that's the kind of commitment I bring to this position. And I'm asking for your vote, and I want you to know that I promise that I will be your voice.
Thank you, Sarah. Jerry, then Scott.
On the Planning Commission, I love sitting there when a developer walks up to the pulpit, because when I'm in Flagstaff, I'm the guy at the pulpit and I'm going against other cities. I'm running for council because as we get to the end of our developable projects that are out there, I think I can bring experience to know what those developers are trying to do. As far as the open space issue, because that's obviously a big issue, that is paved with good intentions from council. It really was. I could see where they were trying to make that work. But there are solutions. It's not one solution. It's probably, from what I've looked at, probably 2 or 3 solutions to get it right back where it is. I personally have developed probably 28 open space communities in which none of these issues exist. And they're beautiful and they're a great place to live. And I know that after visiting with everybody and seeing the concerns, and seeing the concerns of people that don't live next to open space, I maintain my own open space. A lot of people do that are on the bigger lots. That open space is on their lots. And where it's out there, it can be a great thing. It just wasn't done properly at the beginning, but that's not to say it can't be tweaked and turned back around. And I'm not saying council did something wrong. It's just something that can be fixed.
Thank you, Jerry. On to Scott, followed by Kathy.
Well, we only have this 1 minute. You have to kind of say a lot of things fast. So I want to clarify something. We've changed all the ordinances. There will never be another trail surplus. We love the trails. I ran or slow jogged on the trails 3 miles today. It's relative because people pass me up walking their dogs. But at the same time, I want to say that we never touched on one of the most important topics we've got to talk about, and that's neighboring cities annexing us. And there's a big annexation going on in the northwest corner by our neighboring city to the west. And I've tried to protect the borders of Highland. The properties south of Lone Peak, American Fork was making a move to annex that, and I stepped in and helped stop that. It's better to have these properties in Highland where we get the benefits, such as the taxes, and not all the negatives, so we need to remember that. But I love the trails, and I don't want anybody to walk out here thinking I don't use them every day. But I want to say, thanks, Kurt. You're going to be a great mayor.
Thank you, Scott. Kathy, followed
You were right at the buzzer.
by Tina.
Good
How's
timing.
that?
Yeah, perfect timing. So why should you vote for me? I love the city of Highland. I have the time to serve you. I am not competing with a career at this time. I have the time to listen. I want to listen. I have been going out and talking to the residents and listening to the issues that they have, and I want to do that for you. I have the interest. I come to city council meetings regularly. Sometimes I'm the only person here that isn't presenting at the pulpit. And when everyone leaves, I'm sitting in the chair by myself, except for the people sitting up here. So I really do have an interest and a love for this city, and I would love to be able to serve you. I have a good background. My degree was in international relations, which is really political science with a language and kind of a global government type degree. But I also have been in many leadership positions in my life, and I have also served and done volunteer work in all the areas, in all the cities that I've ever lived in. So I want you to know that I will do that same thing for you, and I will serve you, and I will listen. And thank you,
Kathy.
for coming.
Tina, go ahead.
So, first of all, I do want to apologize for being so ignorant about that question. I do know about the open space fee and all the contention and stuff like that, but how refreshing is it for someone to be that honest sitting on this side of things? I don't think you get that from politicians very often. That is something that you will get from me. I am super proud of my integrity, and I'm a very honest person. And if you want someone to work honestly for you and have your back, I'm your woman. So I appreciate that nobody booed at me when I said I didn't have a clue about that. And I'm sorry I didn't understand it as the question was. I do know it's a big deal, and I am aware of that, and am willing to work with folks on that, but I would appreciate your vote. So, thank you.
Thank you, Tina, and excellent presentations tonight. Thank you very much for being here. We have a few people to thank. Mayor Mann, thank you for running the timer and that annoying beep that came along. We really enjoyed that a lot. Thank you very much. City staff, a lot of great people helped to set this up. Nice work for that. Our outstanding Highland Youth Council in the corner, holding up those green signs that I'm sure gave palpitations to the participants, but good job on the Highland Youth Council, and most especially our candidates. Thank you very much for all you're doing and your willingness to serve. Mayor Mann, you had the last word there.
Yes, so again, thanks to you. We do have something special for our moderator, and Cougar's going to give that to you.
Emoluments clause, I can't touch it, I'm going to get arrested by somebody. Thank you very much, wow. I hope it's worth less than $30, otherwise you might see me in handcuffs shortly.
It definitely, most definitely is. So, and that's about there. All right.
That's really nice, thank you very much. But let's have a round of applause for our candidates. Thank you for your participation. And with those concluding remarks, we'll vacate to the lobby, and please continue with the more difficult questions that come in those intimate settings. But thanks for everybody coming. We appreciate the audience.